Hi folks, Steve here, and this is part one of two short videos that I'm doing about how I built and painted this little puppet stand here. I did this just as a little bit of sort of like mood terrain, if you like, for Mordheim. Just cracking on with it. So I didn't really have much of a plan at all going in for this. The idea popped into my head and I thought, right, I'm going to see if I can throw this together quick as I can. So I started off, as you can see there, I'm just cutting a little template for the base out of foam colour. Didn't have much of an idea size wise going in, I kind of just judged it by eye, cut out the little rectangle, and my idea was that I'd be using these coffee stirrers that you can see there to build up the walls around the side of it and just to create the puppet stand in general. Once I had the base cut out of the foam card, I started measuring up and cutting out lots of strips of these little coffee stirrers. The actual height of them, I just kind of eyeballed that looking at the models that I had on my desk and just working out roughly what kind of height that I thought would look good. And then once I had quite a few of those cut out, I started just hot gluing them onto what would be the sides of the stand. So I figured if I got those in, the rear part and the roof of the stand was going to have like a sheet or a tarpaulin cover on it, and the front is obviously going to have the aperture, the hole in the front where you can see the puppets play. So I thought getting the more basic, the easier sides of it up on it first would make my job a lot easier for positioning the rest of it further on. I then glued a cross piece across the whole length of the side, and this was just both to give it a bit more strength to the structure, to keep all the sides of the panels that I've just put on together, and it was also going to give me a rough height for where the opening was going to be on the front as well, so I could use that to construct what I had in mind as being like a little shelf for it that would be the stage or the play area for the puppets as well. I used some super glue to make sure that the cross beam was attached nice and solid to the side of the building, and then I flipped it over and did exactly the same process to the other side to create the second side of the piece. I then began working on the front part of the stand, and for this, first of all, I just quickly measured out some of the vertical planks that I'd be using, so I wanted these to come up about midway and be in line with the cross beams that I'd put on. So I was pretty much, again, just measuring these by eye and then cutting them into size and attaching them once more using my hot glue gun. As you can probably tell, this entire build, I didn't really have a proper set out plan for it. It was quite intuitive, and I just went in and had a go and just found out what worked and what didn't on the fly, really. I think sometimes it's really fun to do a project like that because you don't really know exactly what you're going to end up with. You can try new things, and I think you'll learn a lot because you'll also make quite a few mistakes along the way as well, and it's always making a mess of things where you learn how not to do something. I added another cross beam on the front to give support, the same as the sides, and then I could see that there's quite a few little strands and blobs of hot glue on there, so I just took a lighter and just quickly burnt them off, and that gets rid of them nice and quick. I also wanted to place a beam across the front of those horizontal panels, just because they're not exactly level, and it would also frame the opening quite nicely, and my intention was to be able to line up the little what I would put as like the stage area as well. So all I did was I just quickly measured out and cut a beam that I could fit in to do that job. At the same time, I also cut the pieces out for the little stage or performance area so I could glue those in as well. This actually required a bit more fiddling than I'd accounted for, because the level of the crossbeams that I'd put on either side, and so I decided to also add a second beam across the front of the stand, just to help these match up a little bit better, and I also used a bit of super glue to get them on sturdy as well. I also wanted to run some connective pieces from either side at the top of the stand, so this would just give the whole thing a lot more stability and complete that frame. and it would also allow me to attach a little bit of card as almost like a little bit of a roof that I could then work the later stages on when I was going to add the tissue that would look like cloth draped over it. The stage was a little bit tricky, but with some fiddling and some super glue I managed to get those supports stuck in place. With a few more pieces glued across the top, I had a nice solid frame and also a flat surface on the roof for me to work with later. Then just adding a square piece of cardstock to the roof completed that part of building the structure. Now we're at the stage where I'll be adding the tissue, which would be used to create a look like a tarpaulin or cloth that's going to go over the roof and down over the back of the stand. And so for this I'm just using ordinary toilet paper or tissue paper. The idea is to cut it roughly to the kind of size that I want so I can position it correctly on the building, and then I'm just going to soak it in a mix of water and PVA glue and get that draped over in a manner that I want. It can be quite tricky to work with sometimes because it does have a habit of getting oversaturated and then it can just sort of break apart and tear, but you just have to be persistent with it. The more you do it, the sort of easier it becomes, or the better you get at judging how far you can stretch the tension before it does tear on you. And you can layer up multiple times as well, so sometimes the more layers you put on the better, because it helps to mask the fact that it is tissue paper. It looks a bit more cloth-like. You can work the fibres around a little bit and get a much better result by doing that. All you need to do is carefully move the tissue paper around, just adjust it slightly using the brush that you're applying the glue with, and it works those fibres and it just takes away that kind of tissue paper look if you're very careful doing it. You can see here that's pretty much what I'm doing now. I'm just adding smaller bits of tissue on and I'm just working it in, and I'm getting a bit of that glue on and just building up the layers as well. So it's the thicker it is, the stronger it'll set as well, so you'll have a nice hard terrain piece once it dries that's not going to get damaged as easily as if it was just one layer, because it can still be prone to tearing because it's only just paper with a bit of glue on it. So multiple layers is always going to give you a bit more strength to the structure. Now, remember how I said I was eyeballing these measurements and just judging it as I went along? Well, it was at this point that I realised I wasn't quite happy with the building. It was too wide, so it just didn't look right to me. The kind of stands that you see on beaches at the seaside, things like that, they look a little bit thinner. When you look at them front on, they look a little bit taller, and so I could have left it the way it was and carried on, but I knew I wasn't going to be happy with it, so I decided I was just going to go in and hack it apart and make that adjustment. And so that you can do that when you're building terrain pieces or any little project like that. Don't be afraid of making a fix. If you look at something and you feel like it's just not right, then you're much better off going in, being brave, taking it apart, correcting it, and then you'll be much happier with the finished product. And so that's what I did here. Just dived in with my craft knife, started slicing bits up. Unfortunately, I did have to take all the tissue off and everything like that. It wasn't dry at that point, so it wasn't too traumatic to do that. Just meant that once I'd cut it apart, removed part of the width of the building, I just then went through the entire process that I'd just shown you to get it back to the stage that I was happy with. Once I'd done that and I was happy with the result, I attached two further little pieces either side, which were going to have a little bit of decoration on them. And I'd also made the sign which was going to go on the top, though I'd made the decision that I wasn't going to put that on until after I'd painted, because I felt that would be easier. And that was the build part of this project completed. In the next video I'll show you how I went about painting it. I hope you liked this video, hope you found some useful ideas or processes in it. So that's all for now, but check out the second part where you can watch me paint it. Thanks very much for watching.